Catherine will speak on my behalf. Mrs. Meghan Markle has repeatedly written to the palace seeking our intervention in the Epstein matter. But like Andrew, she must face her own consequences. The House of Windsor didn't just issue a statement, they dropped a nuclear bomb. With one devastating, cold-blooded decision, King Charles completely shattered every hidden hope Meghan Markle ever had of wearing the royal crest again. The final plea rejected. The access completely revoked. The palace made it absolutely clear the door isn't just closed, it's been locked, bolted, and the key has been thrown away. This wasn't just a regular family feud. This was a king drawing a permanent line in the sand after years of agonizing silence, pride, and public warfare. But what really happened behind those palace walls to trigger this absolute lockdown? Hit that subscribe button right now because we are diving deep into the most explosive royal betrayal of the decade. Imagine staring at your phone, reading a text that officially banishes you from the world's most exclusive family. That was Meghan's reality. She stared at the screen, rereading the brutal words, desperately searching for any loophole, any sign of mercy. There was none. Buckingham Palace, the ultimate seat of royal power, had officially declared that Meghan Markle was completely erased from the monarchy's future. This was the ultimate public humiliation. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team had been frantically working the lines for weeks, begging for just a sliver of access, a controlled invitation here, a symbolic appearance there, anything to show the world the royal ice age was thawing. But King Charles treated her file like a ticking time bomb. Sitting in his isolated study, he knew that crushing Meghan's dreams would break Prince Harry's heart too. It was a cold, agonizing choice, but Charles knew the crown couldn't survive on sentiment. Reopening the gates to Team Sussex was simply too dangerous. It wasn't a victory lap for the king. It was a tragic admission that the family was broken forever. But if you think Charles acted alone, think again. Prince William's fingerprints were all over this execution. A top-secret note attached to the file revealed that the future king had been pulling the strings from the shadows. William didn't need to shout to get his way. His absolute fury was baked right into the icy wording of the final banishment. This wasn't a temporary timeout, it was a permanent exile. Instantly, panicked whispers echoed through the palace corridors. What on earth did Meghan actually demand that pushed Charles to launch this total scorched earth policy? To find out, we have to look at the explosive secret history between these bitter rivals. This was no longer about royal duties. This was a war of pride, deep-seated betrayal, and the toxic weight of a family door being slammed shut in your face. Meghan thought she could negotiate her way back in. William stood like an iron wall, knowing one single concession would trigger total chaos. So what did Meghan actually want? She wasn't asking to go back to the grueling schedule of a full-time working royal. No, she wanted the glamour without the grind. Elite family events, high-profile balcony appearances, and a massive public signal that she was back in the inner circle. She needed that royal stamp of approval to save her global brand, but Charles was playing a completely different game. He wanted to be a forgiving father, but he had an empire to protect. He secretly confessed to an aide that the decision was killing him because it meant losing Harry for good. Yet, William's secret warnings echoed in his ears. William made it clear letting Meghan back in, even an inch, would completely destabilise Catherine, traumatise the children, and drag the monarchy right back into a media circus. William didn't want an apology. He wanted a fortress. Even Queen Camilla was sweating behind the scenes, terrified that a completely cornered Meghan, with absolutely nothing left to lose, would weaponize the palace's silence into a catastrophic public media war. But the real reason Charles pulled the plug didn't start with this letter. It started with a shocking, top-secret incident at Windsor that ruined royal trust forever. Every historic royal blowout has one moment where everything changes. For Meghan and the royals, that moment exploded during a private remembrance reception at Windsor. A quiet conversation behind closed doors turned shockingly toxic. A senior palace aide was left physically shaking and pale, and William's face turned to pure ice. After that night, the question wasn't whether Meghan would return, it was whether the family could ever look her in the eye again. The fury started when Meghan found out she was banned from a crucial, family-only balcony appearance. In the royal world, the balcony is everything. It tells the world who is in and who is out. Seeing her name erased, Meghan flew into a rage, confronting palace aides right after a deeply solemn memorial ceremony. William watched the drama unfold in horror. While the family was trying to grieve, Meghan was allegedly hyper-focused on image, position, and control. William didn't see a victim, he saw a dangerous threat to the peace of his household. That confrontation created a canyon that no amount of PR could ever bridge. Charles watched the disaster from across the room, his heart sinking. He had hoped shared grief would heal old wounds, but instead he watched raw resentment explode in a sacred space. A confidential report of the fight was immediately locked in a royal vault. The most chilling detail, Meghan's exact words to the staff: "You cannot erase me and expect silence." To the palace, that wasn't a plea, it was a direct threat. That warning note followed the file straight to the king's desk, sealing her fate forever. The final judgment didn't happen in public. It happened in a suffocatingly tense room behind locked doors. King Charles sat at the head of the table, staring at Meghan's final letter, while Prince William stood by the window like an immovable statue. No speeches, no ceremony, just a king, a future king, and the ultimate execution of a royal title. Charles had called this emergency council of war the second the letter arrived, desperate to kill the issue before it leaked to the press. Meghan's demands were massive. She wanted access to the palace's secure communication channels and an immediate end to the royal freeze. Charles actually hesitated over the word rejected, hating how brutal it sounded. But William stepped in with an iron fist. He reminded his father of the agonizing years Catherine had endured without ever weaponizing her pain, and how the royal children had been dragged through the mud. William's voice didn't shake with anger. It was deadly, quiet, and completely unyielding. Charles took off his glasses, looking like a broken father rather than a powerful king. Reopening palace channels meant handing Meghan a royal megaphone, destroying the security boundaries they had bled to rebuild. The king looked down, took a breath, and delivered the final blow. "Then we close it." Instantly, an aide slipped a pre-written statement across the desk. The chill in the room was palpable. The palace machinery had already calculated the execution before the king even spoke the words. It was sharp, surgical, and designed to completely terminate the discussion. 1342, succession takes the crown. This was the moment the balance of power shifted. Charles signed the execution order, but it was William's ruthless strategy that dictated every single line. In the corridors of power, it felt like the future king was already ruling before the crown had even changed hands. The palace PR machine moved at light speed, locking down the announcement to prevent any frantic leaks or counterattacks from California. This statement was engineered to completely suffocate the narrative. William had drawn his line, and then I, and then. I, Meg, and then was an active threat to the survival of his family and the public trust. He wasn't hunting for revenge. He was acting as a ruthless protector, even if it meant sacrificing his own brother. Harry was the collateral damage of this war, and Charles knew it. By exiling Meghan, the king was accepting that Harry would hate him forever. But the palace door was locked, bolted, and reinforced. The killer phrase in the text? No further pathway to formal reintegration. Translation: you are officially out forever. 1726. Meghan's final devastation. When the echo of that closed door crossed the Atlantic, it hit Meghan like a physical blow. The wording wasn't just diplomatic policy, it was a highly personal vendetta. It was calculated to strip her of any remaining dignity, leaving absolutely zero room for negotiation. The British Monarchy had officially closed her chapter and burned the book. Meghan received the verdict through a secure, encrypted channel just minutes before the global media found out. The palace wanted to blindside her, leaving her zero time to spin the narrative. The document confirmed the worst. No events, no contact, no royal restoration. Meghan reportedly collapsed into a stunned silence, her face turning completely pale as her entire identity and global leverage vanished in a single sentence. Harry watched her, absolutely terrified by her stillness. He had seen her angry, he had seen her cry, but this hollow silence was deafening. He frantically begged to call someone, Charles, an aide, anyone who could stop the bleeding. Meghan didn't move. Her eyes were glued to 5 lethal words. The family position is settled. It was the ultimate tag team move by Charles and William. There was no backdoor left to exploit. Harry realized that calling was useless. Fighting would only prove the royals right. The door hadn't just been shut in a fit of rage, it had been locked with terrifying institutional discipline. But before the newsstands exploded, the King and the Duchess had to face each other one last time in a top-secret phone call. No advisors, no publicists, no filters. Just Charles and Meghan, separated by an ocean of bad blood. Speaking after the execution had already been carried out. This wasn't a conversation, it was a royal autopsy. Charles agreed to the call out of pure duty, knowing the raw human agony on the other end of the line. Meghan answered with an icy, fragile control. She didn't scream. Instead, she asked one devastating question that cut straight to the bone. Was there ever a version of my return you could have accepted? The king's silence on the line lasted long enough to completely crush her spirit. He finally told her the brutal truth. He could never trust her again. He could not risk their private family trauma being sold to the highest bidder or turned into public entertainment. Charles sounded like a father trapped in a golden cage, while Meghan listened in quiet, suffocating grief. Then Charles delivered the final, definitive line. This is not punishment, it is protection. The palace had officially built a fortress around William, Catherine, and the kids, and Meghan was left on the outside. She whispered that she understood, and with those words, the war was over. Charles gave her a final courtesy, but he absolutely refused to give her a second chance. By morning, the secret execution became a global media circus. Britain woke up to brutal, bleeding headlines plastered across every front page, with broadcasters going into total meltdown outside the palace gates. The story was out of the family's hands. It belonged to a transfixed world watching a real-life royal exile unfold in real time. Charles turned off the palace TVs, unable to watch his family's raw pain be picked apart by talking heads. He had saved the crown, but at what cost? He had protected the throne, but completely fractured his own bloodline. Meanwhile, across London, the defining image of the crisis emerged. Outside a hyper-congested Victoria station, thousands of commuters stopped dead in their tracks, staring in shock at a massive newsboard that read, "Palace door closed. King ends. Meghan return bid." One family's devastating tragedy had become a headline people read while rushing to catch a train.